My name is NT Ethok. I co-founded BFS along with Julian, sort of sit in the background, big strategic thoughts, right? and then Lisa and Julian and the guys and Mia sort of actually go and do it. But I also started a company called FitGrid. FitGrid is a software company that's focused on community engagement. And, the retreat concept actually came out of having been on a few different retreats and then also realizing that so many studios out there don't do retreats because it is incredibly difficult, because it's incredibly time consuming, because it's just not the core business model, right? And yet the concept of it is something that everyone's sort of intrigued by for about 1 minute. And then they're like, when they realize how much work it's going to be, they're like, yeah, that sounds intriguing for like next year, or maybe 5 years from now, or maybe never, right? So that's what ends up happening. Let me take a step back. So in this conversation, I'm going to outline how FitGrid is helping studios to scale retreats. Like if you want to get in, if you want to do retreats, and you want to make that a core part of your business, I will discuss that. Okay, so do not take the number of tabs that I had open there as any indication of my mindset. There are about 1,000 of them, and those are always open. But it's all good. So I'm going to talk about this as an example. Retreat in Tulum. You guys know Tulum, Mexico? I'm in Cancun right now. We do have a retreat that's actually kicking off in Tulum, and that'll be happening on May 2nd through May 6th. So here's what we're going to go through. When we talk about this, and start with the FitGrid aspect, and we're going to get into the broader sort of educational aspect. So why FitGrid? Why retreat? What are the economics around it? What is the experience that we provide? How do we help with the marketing and sales process and doing all that? That's going to be very brief. I'm going to walk through all of this pretty quickly. I'm going to give you a sort of a big sort of general outline. I'll show you some of the tools that we provide for getting this stuff done, some of the ways we find for facilitating, making it happen. And then we're going to open up for questions. So you'll be able to ask whatever questions you have or you want, whatever you're curious about. We'll sort of go from there. There's one other person who's on the line with me, that is Brittany. Brittany actually has a page in this deck. She works with FitGrid. She actually helps a lot with what we do on the retreat side. I'm account executive on that. Why FitGrid? Let me just start with that. We build community. For those of you who don't know, on the B2B side of things, we have a philosophy, and that philosophy is that fitness is all about the people. We think that people are more likely to go back to classes the more connected they are to the other people. What else can you do with communities? Well, with communities, you can extend them. So during COVID, we were the first ones to come up with a live stream solution, for fitness studios. So you could take your schedule, put it on connected to Zoom meeting, and that would extend the community beyond your four walls. And as we come out of COVID, I've always been intrigued by the idea that you can take your community with you, on vacation essentially around the world. One of the things that really, really does is for those people that end up going on the retreat, it creates a bond that just doesn't die, right? They continue to then want to come back to you. And one of the things that you end up with as a challenge is, well, what do I do next? What do I do for the encore? And what we have encouraged studio owners to think about and say is try to make retreats a core part of your model. With the help of a partner, if you want to do it yourself, it'll take a fair amount of time. But with us, for example, the partner, I try to say do it twice a year. Once in the spring, once in the fall. Same place. Why that? Because the one you do in the spring will end up with a lot of people feeling FOMO and then wanting to do it again in the fall, right? So if you do that twice a year, then that's actually a pretty significant revenue stream for you. That especially if you are outsourcing a lot of the pain, the coordination, logistics, and all the rest of that, can actually just be bottom line dollars for you. And then you have to add variability. So again, when you do it with us, for example, we like to say is we want to be like the Four Seasons, right? The Four Seasons doesn't own the hotels, but they manage the experience. So if we want to say, okay, well, we have the Mexico experience, we have the Greece experience, we have the Italy experience, we have the Canary Islands experience, we have the Bora Bora experience, Morocco, Bali, where do you want to go? And you could literally take your community around the world, working with FitGrid, and know that the experience will be the same, the Four Seasons type experience. So that's why FitGrid. Why retreat? We're all entrepreneurs on the line here. right? So whether it's BFF, whether it's FitGrid, whether it's my other companies that started educational video game company as well, I always say that in your sector, if there's a piece of that sector or part of that sector that's growing faster, go get yours, right? Go get yours. So in wellness tourism, $814 billion sector growing at 12% per year, right? Take advantage of that because we know that our core businesses are coming back and coming back slowly, right? When people finally sort of realize that the economy is actually doing really, really well, they're like, okay, I can open my pockets again, and that's one thing, and that will happen. But it's still people are still a little bit, sensitive to that. But the one thing we do know that people are doing is they're traveling, and they want to go, they want to get out, and want to get to places. So take your piece of this part of the industry because it will help with retention. It will help with another face for your studio on social media, on Instagram, and all the rest of that, and a different kind of buzz with the people that have done it. And it's a fast-growing sector part of the industry. From an economics perspective, like everything is a playbook, right? If someone gave you a playbook on how to run a studio and all the rest, it's so much easier. Nobody does that, but that'd be great. We have a playbook that offers studios $400 to $1,000 in profit per client sent on a retreat, with little work relative to doing it yourself. Now, that doesn't mean no work. Anyone that wants to come in and be like, "Yo, you're doing this all for me," cool. I'm like, that's not what we do. Like, at the end of the day, it's still your customers or your clients and you're the ones that have the direct connection and need to convince them to come on. But we can do a lot of the work around that. So if you do it twice a year, you send 15 clients each time. That could be 12K to $30,000 to your bottom line. Here's where it becomes more work versus less work. It all depends on the size of the list and the number of people that you want to take on a retreat. So we like to say that in general, a 15 person or fewer retreat can be handled by one person, instructor, owner that goes along with it or whatever. You start to get more than that, and you probably want two people just because the dynamics are really sort of weird. Now, what we bake in is we'll bake in sort of a logistics assistant, into what we do. But in general, the reason why I say that is that the first list that you're going to go to when you're seeing whether or not there are people that want to go on this retreat is your list. You've owned the studio for 5 years, 8 years. You have a list of 20, 30, 40 people, that you've seen, that have gone through your classes or whatever. And you're going to text and be like, I'm doing this. Do you want to do this with me? Right? So if it's smaller, like 10 people, 12 people or whatever, your list probably fulfills that first one. And then everything is all about social media and the images and FOMO, the experience. So one of the things that we've done, and this is an example that we gave. So we were speaking with a yoga studio, and I wanted to use this specifically because based on what they wanted an experience that was more Tulum than Cancun. What does that mean? It means that they wanted something that was a little more removed. It was a little more, I call it jungly, so to speak, like a little more in touch with nature and all the rest of that. Okay, well, here's the kind of experience that we can offer. Now, what we do, we walk in, as FitGrid, and we basically say, hey, um, what kind of experience do you want? We have this range of options. So we're creating like a FitGrid retreat experience with this hotel or this retreat center, whatever it happens to be. And then we partner with you. You insert your workout. So your instructor comes in. If you do the workout once a day, twice a day, or whatever. So in this conversation, we're sort of saying, hey, this Loom thing, that vibe feels sort of right. And the experience of the excursions that could be there could be the cenote, could be Temescal, could be the Tulum ruins. And certainly there's the experience of the famed Tulum Beach Club, right? We're doing this over a 5-day time period. Okay, so day one, you arrive, and in the evening, there's sort of a private chef, meal that is pulled together. So a welcome meal. Then you have day 2, day 3, day 4. Those are what we call the experience days. And then day 5, everyone sort of leaves. So on day 2, day 3, day 4, sort of sit there and say, okay, I'm doing a workout in the morning, I'm doing a workout in the evening. People will sort of congregate and relax in the evening time. So in the middle of the day, there are excursions or activities that could be done, right? Which excursions, which activities? do you want to have happen? And so we come up with a list of those. We work with you to say which ones are you most interested in doing? Do you think that your community would be interested in doing? And then we put those in place, and we're sort of off the races because we've constructed our general outline. Marketing support. So we will help on the marketing support. Emily, you probably realize there's a lot that goes into creating the marketing materials. It is very, very challenging. I'll give you an example. We were actually doing a retreat with Caiaphas, and you may know Caiaphas. It's actually a franchise group. This is happening on May 2nd of this year. And so whether it's landing pages, here's the landing page, that we created for them. So the landing pages, right? Folks can jump in. If they're interested, they would click on here. There's a series of questions, payments, and all the rest that is sort of taken care of. But, there's Nikki on the left and her sister Amy. They're going to be the heads of this retreat. This is what the actual space looks like. We have a sample sort of daily schedule, in there. This actually comes with a free sort of meal and free drink, at Balabamba Beach House, which is in Tulum, one of the famed Tulum beach houses. By the way, some places or some studios are like, nope, no alcohol. Some studios are like, no, we want to have that as something that people are open to. So we talk about the folks. This is the actual what the locations look like, the furniture and all the rest of that. We sort of break down what the costs are, who the team is, retreats, accommodations, and all the rest of that. And they're frequently asked questions. So putting all of this together, we work with you to put all of that together. Very very simple, very basic. Then there are posters, right, that we can create that can be put there. We have a marketing calendar. So we'll say, hey, here is when certain messages should go out. We actually used to create messages for people. We don't do that anymore. The reason that we don't is that it actually needs to be in your voice. So we'll create a calendar that here's what we suggest, saying bullet point, put it in your voice, send that out. If we have 4 months to market the retreat, then, they will increase in urgency, until the final message is just like, yo, get off your butt, like get your dollars in because we're leaving tomorrow, sort of thing. So all of that is sort of is baked into what we do. The other thing that's an important piece of what we do, and that is what Brittany looks like. But we also have sales support, right? And a big part of the challenge, of getting a retreat done is that it's hard to follow up. You're not really studios aren't really built in a way where you have like a sales team that will follow up on what people are saying or people that are interested. That is where we come and we actually will help, with that. So if you send out an email and they're open to their clicks on it, then we can follow up with the people and just sort of help pull them across the finish line, which is an incredibly important part of getting it done. At the end of the day, what we found is that almost nobody just clicked on an email or a text message or whatever that goes out. This ends up being a sizable purchase for them, and they want to talk to someone, and so who's the person that they're talking to? If it's one of the owners or one of the managers or whatever, that can almost be a full-time job, just doing like the follow-up and everything. And so that's one of the reasons why it becomes really challenging, for studios, is because it becomes almost like another job. So if it's not a passion project for someone, until you've gotten the model and you've gotten it up and running and sort of going all the way through, and then you're just sort of rinsing and repeating, then it's a real challenge and it's not something that people choose to take on. So we can help with that. So that's the sales support side. And I just wanted to show a couple of, for those of you that are still questioning whether or not this is something that you want. I talked about retention, I talked about feelings and all the rest of that. Just let's hear a little bit of what some people have said from retreats that have been done, and I'll sort of scale back through. Can you hear it?
So you asked me what my experience was like, and I have to tell you it's the best. It's hard to breathe because it's been so wonderful, and it's hard to say goodbye. We've met so many amazing friends, and I was lucky enough to be with one of my best friends ever. The instructors were fabulous. The retreat personnel were great. I love the person who's videoing this message to you, and if you ever get a chance to meet her.
Oh, I'll just stop it there. It was nice. Here was another one.
I am getting ready to leave from the B3 Cancun retreat. We have had the best time with this group of amazing ladies, getting to talk with each other, exercise, breathe, move, and relax. We had bar classes, spa time. We got to ride on a yacht yesterday and play in the water. So we had a wonderful time, and I'm so grateful for everyone who organized the trip and everyone who made this possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch more, of those sorts of things. So if that is the sort of spirit that you'd like to engender in the people that, go to your retreats and all the rest of that, then give me a high five. No, yeah, then you should do a retreat, whether you do it with us or someone else. So that's it. Let me actually go and do one last thing. And that last thing is here. I went through a deck that talked about what we do and how we put together the experience. Let me just say this. I want to do it in a slightly different way here. Playbook. So if you're marking down the things that you want, like the big pieces that you want to do from a retreat perspective, have a playbook for how it can. One of the challenges that you'll end up having is you have to make the big upfront down payment, right? You go to the hotel and they can ask for 30 to 50%, of the total amount that you need because they want to reserve that time frame. Now, what I'll say is that because we come in and we're sort of like, no, we're not doing one retreat with 15, 20 people. We're doing 100 retreats, right? Do you want to be part of that, sort of funnel or part of that flow? What does that change the dynamics of that?
Oh, sure.
And the answer to that is it does. It changes the dynamics of that conversation. So we can actually do that without the big, upfront down payment. Leverage your community as an investment for your studio. A lot of us focus so much on going out and getting new clients. Get your existing clients to pay for more or pay for different experiences. We've talked about this in BFF in a number of ways, whether it's extending to the wellness part of the experience. This is another way of extending your existing community investment you've already made. Different income stream for your studio. There are different options. From our perspective, this isn't a FitGrid site, but you can create different options depending upon your client's budget. From our perspective, we offer a 5-day experience or a 7-day experience. The 5 days is you arrive day 1, then day 2, day 3, day 4, you're doing a bunch of stuff, and you leave day 5. 5 days. The 5-day trip. 7-day trip is arrive day 1, then day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. You end up doing things, and then day 7, you end up leaving. But the biggest thing is probably the planning half. Again, Emily doesn't look like she's sweating with all the planning that she's doing, probably because, she's done this a number of times before. But I will tell you, it is like all the things that could possibly go wrong are like a challenge. And it ends up being on you, right? And so it ends up being like, oh, I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to do that. I didn't make my flight, or I want to come, and I come in a day early. And you're fielding all of these questions, right? And so it's so much easier to just not have to deal with, all of that, getting in touch with the hotel, figuring out all the stuff, the excursions, dealing with the payment. A lot of folks can't afford the upfront payment. How do you create payment plans for them? All of that sort of stuff is part of what you can just sort of move off your plate and let us do. And then, of course, the hotels and experiences. At least from a FitGrid perspective, we don't claim to be all things to all people, right? Like we are not doing backpacking retreats, right? Backpacking retreats is great. I did backpacking around Europe, when I was like 24 years old. It was absolutely fantastic. This is something that is either sort of your 4 or 5 star level, depending upon what you want. So we're very specific and very clear, about that, which is why you won't see the price point come down tremendously. But we give what we say we're going to give, and so we think that that's very, very important to do. Do what you're going to do. What you say you're going to do. That leads us to roughly a $2.5 to $5,000, per client sort of experience. That higher end is if someone's staying at a really, really risky, place. Think about this more like $2.75 to $3,000, just in general. Um, and that's it. That's essentially it. Network of properties right now. That's the FitGrid thing and what we've pulled together. But happy to take questions on either that or on the stuff in general.
What properties do you work with as one NT?
I will answer that question offline. One of the challenges is that if I give all the properties out, then everybody goes to those properties, and then it ends up being a challenge. So we tend to keep that close to the vest. But if you're interested, then I can absolutely help. But what I would say from a descriptive perspective is, at least here in the metro area, 5-star all-inclusive resorts and hotels, or experiences that are the equivalent, of that. If it's not all inclusive, then it's nice, and we will figure out how to get you meals that are baked into, the thing. Sometimes the alcohol is part of it, sometimes it's not, and then depending on the type of experience that you want, we will help to pattern that experience for you.
Is Mexico your only country right now?
For right now, it is. Next year we'll be expanding. So right now we have Los Cabos, we have Tulum, and we have Cancun. But next year we'll be expanding beyond Mexico. But TBD on where, kind of like Emily there.
How long do they need from the time they contact you to start planning their retreat until they can actually hold the retreat?
So we recommend at least 4 months. 6 months, 5 or 6 months is actually even better. It'll take us some time to get up to speed on what you're trying to do and all the information. We have done it as little as 2.5 to 3 months. That was a scramble. Don't necessarily want to do that again. It was extremely successful, retreat. But I will only ever do that again if it's like for my mom or something like that, like for her birthday.
Local guides, that's a question. I know that in retreats I used to hold with my community, having a really local experience is what made it so special. Do you have connections with local guides?
We do. So we tend to think about the activities on two fronts. This is us in particular. There are the activities that, let's say, the hotels or the partners that we have, that they offer as part of what they do. And that stuff can be incredibly fun. If you go to one of the 5-star, 4.5-star, 4-star all-inclusive resorts, in the Mexico area, and they've got stuff like the jet skis and the beach volleyball, and just, depends on what you want. Some studios, the experience that they want is give my people a vacation in a warm place, where they can congregate with each other when there are a bunch of options to happen. So karaoke night, nobody does karaoke, back at the studio. So that's one set of experiences. So it just really depends on where you are.
So was the answer then to that, it sounds like you can do the things that come with the hotel, but then you can go and do the
Then you can go and do the local historical, that's right, the things that are associated with that country or that city or that region. And we would connect you with the people who will do that.
Is there a minimum? Like, do you have to have at least 10 people, and is there a maximum?
You need to have at least 1,000 people. No, I'm joking. No. What we recommend that if there aren't at least 7 people going, then you'd really want to question whether or not it's even worthwhile, to you, sort of pulling all of that together, because, the experience is really one where you want people to sort of bond. Having said that, what I was saying, what we've done quite a bit is we can combine studios, which takes a little bit of the pressure off. So if you have a friend or another studio that you want to do it with, and we think like a 20-person retreat feels pretty good. Well, that lowers you down to like 10 people, for each studio, and the two owners or the 2 instructors or whatever it happens to be. That's a pretty cool experience. So there are ways of reducing that. 3 studios, 7 people each, each other. So we recommend, if you don't think you can get 7 people, then, don't do it in general, but there are also ways to reduce the stress.
And some of the places I had taken my studios to, that place would also advertise my retreat on their website.
Totally.
So is that a possibility in these retreats?
Yes. So you have an option. Your retreat can either be private, so it's just your community, or it can be open, And if it's open, then FitGrid will help to promote that on our Instagram. We also have our list of people that we believe might be interested in this, and our list goes into millions. So we're not saying that we'll blast out everything to like millions and millions of people. We're still inching into how much of that we actually do at a time, but yes.
Okay, let's get down to some of the nuts and bolts for the instructor or the leader that's on the retreat. Is
Love
there
nuts and bolts.
nuts and bolts? Because this is where it starts to get like, is this a lot of work or is this fun? So
Yeah.
costs for the instructor or the person, the cost for the studio, cost for the instructor that's on the trip. So talk to us about, is there an instructor included in their room? How does all that
Yeah.
work?
From a cost perspective, what we've done is we said that the studio itself only needs to put down a deposit of $500, right? So if your guarantee that the hotel was asking for would normally have been $5, $7, $10,000, $500. We work with you on that aspect. The second thing, so that's the only cost the studio pays out of pocket, right? Is that $500. Then the rest of the money gets recouped after the experience has happened, right? So that's where it comes into how much does each client pay the person I've shown the slide, on that. And then out of that, you get $400 to $1,000. I mean, to sort of temper expectations, think about it as a 400, 500, 600 level, depending upon what's happening. And then you would get that back, per person, right? So that would be the payment sort of out to you. In terms of the instructor, baked into the model, the instructor goes for free, right? So it's baked in there. The instructor's cost of travel and staying there will actually be covered, by the larger cost of the retreat.
So essentially for the studios, this is almost like a guest experience, meaning FitGrid will deal with all of the contracts, the deposits, collecting the money from your attendees and delivering that
Yep.
money to the hotel or the resort.
That's right. There are small things that we don't do. So think about, FitGrid is based in the United States. A lot of these destinations will be in international places, like Mexico. So the things that we can deal with are things that we can send a wire transfer for. If there's a local guide that's taking you, on the donkey to such and such place or whatever, they might not be accepting like credit card. They might not be accepting that. So that might be something to be very clear where everyone needs to sort of pay at that point in time. Will help to organize it, have the person, all the rest of that. But that's the difference. But if it's something where it's like you're at this hotel, it's not an all-inclusive hotel, but we have a fixed price menu or something like that, and there's selection, we can pay the hotel for that and therefore organize that, ahead of time. One of the things that I mentioned on the excursions and the trips, here's the thing we do not do. Some things we do not do. One of the things we do not do, we do not take care of travel, the travel aspect, like from your home to the airport, is not something that we get involved in. We don't get involved in the purchase of the airline tickets to get the client where they want to go. That's something they have to do on their own. Now, we have travel agents that we work with who, in one case, for a $65 fee, will work with your clients and then they can be the point of contact for doing all of that stuff. But, in terms of us going and being like a travel agent per se, not something that we get involved in. Once the person lands, let's say in Mexico or in Cancun or something like that, then the transportation from the airport, over to the hotel, that's part of what we can take care of.
And for any excursions as well. So all transit in country.
Right.
I'll say, as an experienced retreat deliverer, not having to deal with exchange rates for the whole package of the entire retreat is a really nice benefit. Because you're handling that with FitGrid Retreats. Is there a particular time of year that's better than another time of year to come to Mexico?
Absolutely. If you are from Minnesota, then February, March, and April are really good. That's why I talked about sort of where are you located and what is the reason the people are going. So whether it's the fall or whether it's the spring, if you're in a cold weather place, then it's really great to go to Mexico. During the sort of July, August timeframe, there's air conditioning, but it's pretty hot, so most people tend not to go, and those tend to be months that people sort of do their own travel anyway. So you can certainly do it, and we can certainly help you arrange it. But when we think about filling the summer months, we think about other places that we go, whether it's in the United States, like in Napa Valley, or Vermont or something like that, or whether it's different countries like Greece or something.
So hurricane season, seaweed season, that's kind of summertime in Mexico.
I mean, so there's always seaweed. There's just the seaweed that's like really scratchy. I tend to, yeah, I tend to avoid the season that late August. Yeah.
You talked earlier, we talked recently. How many free instructors travel based on how many participants are going? So if we hit a certain number and we need 2 instructors, is that included?
Yeah. I would say 1 instructor for every 7 to 10 people.
There's a nice benefit of having the travel agent in that they can deal with your customers about whether they want travel insurance or not.
Absolutely. That's right. I mean, all the travel stuff, I think that for $65, that's a steal. And in my opinion, I mean, you're already paying $2,750, $3,000. It's sort of like that travel insurance thing down at the bottom that people say, do you want to click on it? If you miss your flight, and we had someone on the retreat miss her flight, if you had to reschedule, or if the flight is delayed by weather or something like that, you have one of 2 options, at that point in time. 3 options. One option is get back on Orbitz or Expedia or whatever you booked with and deal with how do I get the refund for having missed my flight or whatever has happened, and then go and book your next thing. Go and buy a completely different ticket and you're sort of slightly pissed off that you have to figure out all that other stuff in the background. Or get on the phone with a travel agent and just be like, can you figure this out for me? and I'll deal with it later, and you continue and you get to keep in the vibe of what you're doing. So to me, that's an opportunity, that is optional for folks.
And inevitably, any retreat I've ever conducted, some of the group wants to stay longer or come earlier and tack other days onto the trip.
That's right. And we coordinate with the hotel around that. You can ask the questions, and we can work with them to figure out what's possible.
So around that, coordinating with the hotel, dietary needs like the gluten-free, vegan, all of that.
Yes. All of that sort of thing. Depending upon where you go, we definitely want to understand dietary needs, and depending upon what is happening, whether it's a private chef or whether it's an all-inclusive, or whether it's just something that's offered, food, we want to know ahead of time so that we can inform the hotel, about that. If it's a private chef option, then it will include, gluten-free, or it will include, vegetarian options or vegan options or whatever it is. And if it's all-inclusive, then you tend to have those anyway. But again, always good to know.
And so FitGrid is organizing, collecting that information and delivering it to the hotel. That's not on the studio either.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about insurance, liability, all of that. Is there anything the studio, so the customer has a contract with FitGrid Retreats when they're purchasing their retreat. It's not with your studio.
That is correct. So this is a FitGrid product, and we enter into partnership with the studio. The studio is obviously the one doing the workouts. So the agreement between FitGrid and the studio is that from a workout perspective, you are indemnifying us, obviously clients and all the rest of that, from anything that happens with regard to the workout. Same sort of thing that you would have, like a waiver or release that you would have when someone walks into your studio. Same token, as we get into our agreements, with the hotels, we get into your agreements with us. We're basically getting the client to say, look, we can't help, and our partners can't help if you decide to go off and do like windsurfing or whatever, and you fall down and something happens to you, right? Like that's just the nature of living, So those kinds of things happen, and they sign a waiver, for that as well. It's part of the agreement that we have.
So
and then from an travel insurance, and all the rest of that perspective, we advise them that they have to take care of that, on their own. We do not take, any sort of travel insurance, into that. We don't feel that is part of our responsibility, but we can advise. We certainly, how do you say, remind people, about their options, whether it is on the travel insurance side, and certainly remind them to pack their passport if they're going international.
Does the contract you have with the customer also name the studio then as not liable? Or is that not necessary?
FitGrid and its partners. Yeah. One thing I was going to say is, if you are, whether you're doing a retreat for the first time or whether you're scaling the number of retreats that you have, as in Emily is, still have a conversation with us, because it's possible that there are things that we might just be able to take off your plate so that you can then think more strategically about the rest of your business. If retreats is something that you're already doing. If it's something that you're doing for the first time, then I like to say that a big part of what we provide is confidence, right? Like it's sort of daunting, to sort of walk in and be like, wow, I have to put down such and such large down payment in order to do this. We want to make it feel more viable. So we pull down, the guarantee. That's one way of making it feel more viable. And then the other big reason that people don't do it is because they're like, well, if I had to put down that guarantee, then how sure am I that my people are interested and that I'll actually be able to pull off, getting those people in? That's where we'll say, listen, this is enough time for you to do that. Here is a process for actually going through and doing that. And to some extent, let us act as your chief marketing officer for this particular project, which is good because to some extent, it sort of puts you in the position of, okay, tell me what to do, right? And we're sort of, well, do this, do this, do this, do this, right? And if you do those things, then generally this is the experience that we'll have in terms of getting folks in. And if we don't see, that happening, then we can adjust along the way. Sort of like throwing a party for the first time, and you're just kind of like you get everything ready, and then 7 days before, no one signed up, and you're like, oh my god, is anyone going to come to the party? And we're able to say, don't worry about it. They don't sign up till day 5. Don't worry about it. So then at day 5, we're like, okay, kind of no. Let's see what we're going to do in order to make that happen. So that's the experience that we bring. It really say to just give confidence to what you already believe will be great for you and that you can do.
I know when we had retreats, it was easily an hour or 2 minimum spent with every single traveler as they asked the 2,012,000 questions that they have about traveling. That you're handling that particular piece certainly makes a retreat a viable option for a smaller staffed studio.
Absolutely. And that's where Brittany, who's on the line, actually helps with that. And whether it's Brittany or whether it's someone else on our team, it's very, very helpful. At the end of the day, what we like to say is everything else that's happening is lead gen, right? You put up the posters and someone sees a poster and that poster leads to the page and you fill out the I'm interested, that's lead gen. If the instructor announces it in class, that's lead gen. They're all going to want to funnel down to someone or back to someone where they have a conversation with, whether it's by text, whether it's by email, or whether it's in person. And so you just need to prepare for that and be ready for that. We help with that aspect. And the good thing about what we do is that the folks that can't make it this time will help you keep a record, for when they are ready. And so now you build up your list over time of people that, not this time because that's something you do, or it's too close, or, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to go to Mexico. I want to go to Bali. When you got Bali, let me know. Now you have your list.
So really the job of the studio owner is to be really excited about it and tell everybody that they're excited, to teach great classes, share amazing social media the whole time that they're down there, and make sure that there's another one that the people that missed can sign up for the next time.
Exactly right. It's not nothing, but if you compare it to everything else that you would have to do otherwise, it's pretty good deal. And in fact, even on the social media, we will have someone from a logistics perspective who will help with that. And they can certainly take certain photos and certain videos and all that sort of thing. But, you want to encourage your participants, your members, your clients, and you want to do your social media also, because that's what adds the thing, to it.
So right now, 2024, the retreats are solely held in Mexico, several locations, and we'll look for new locations in the US and around the world in 2025.
That's right. So right now, if you're interested in September, October, November, maybe beginning of December, though that gets into, people might have other holidays that they're dealing with, then, please fill out the form. Lisa gave the link over to the form. That's what we are we still have slots available, for that if you're interested, in particular in the Cancun and the Tulum areas. So please, please, please let us know, even if it's just to have a conversation to understand more about whether or not you should be interested. Definitely fill that in.
I think many of you know that I was a customer at BFS before I sold my studios and came over to be the COO. I was in a CEO mastermind group and became quite close to the other members of my group. And T had said earlier, you could combine with other studios. I think it'd be a super cool retreat to take the yoga plus the bar or the strength training and bring your three communities together and share those workouts. It could be quite an exceptional trip to put together if you've got some peers in different modalities that you would like to travel with. So that might not be a way you've done retreats if you have, and I think only Emily has done retreats, but I think that if I still had studios, I would look at doing that, particularly with it being as easy as NT is making it.
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully you like each other, in your groups. So if you like each other, your communities will probably like each other also, because communities tend to be, embodiments of yoga.
What is the maximum number of people that could travel together as one large group?
I would say that right now, I don't particularly want to do more than 30 people. This is me particularly. There are some groups that have come to us and said, listen, we'd love to have 100-person, event. I'm like, that's not a retreat, that's a conference. And I've done conferences with BFF and all the rest of that, and that is like a 4-month, planning, no. So at least for right now, please keep my ulcer at a minimal level. Thank you.
My experience has been 15 to 30 keeps it intimate. The group can move around the world together on these excursions, and but also enough people that they go home feeling like they've made a bunch of new friends.
Yeah. Anywhere, 20 is just 20 sounds like, a good number. And then you end up having enough FOMO. So if you think about the number of members that you have in your studio, if you have anywhere between 150 to 300 members, then 20 is a very, very doable sort of thing, right? And with leftover, because people will be like, oh, I missed that. Let me do the next one. And the way that you keep it fresh with folks and the way that people keep wanting to come back is you then do somewhere else the next year. So you get your 20 in the spring, then you have 20 in the fall. They're just like, oh, wow, I missed that. You do that. And then possibly 20 in the spring because you're going to the next country the next year. Like, I like that. 70% of them want to do it again. And that's how you keep that thing going while still growing your base.
Yeah, let the people who have traveled have first dibs on the next one and have it pre-sold before you even announce it.
Exactly.
A question, have men attended? I know in my retreats, we definitely had oftentimes a handful of men who either came as a couple with a female traveler or another traveler, and men that came alone because people who come to your business are very like-minded and enjoy want to socialize with one another. So it often works out very well that the group just moves amongst themselves and mixes it up and everybody feels welcome and comfortable. But NT, do you have any experience with men joining the trips that you have been a part of so far?
Yeah. So I think it very much reflects the percentages in your studio, right? So if you are primarily a woman-oriented studio, then you'll have most women, sort of doing that. And honestly, what we found, at least so far, is that if the women want this to be a woman thing, they're the ones saying, no, I'm not bringing my husband. It's like, I'm not bringing my husband, I'm not bringing my kids. This is for me, right? But if there's certainly not a problem or a challenge with doing that. If this was, a boot camp, type studio doing that, then I would expect that the proportion would be more like 60-40, and then it's its own dynamic. So we've had men attend before, it's been primarily women, but I think it's all about the dynamic of your studio.
One thing you may not be thinking about is, this has always happened for every retreat I've had. So-and-so who is a member of my studio might want to bring their mother or their sister or their best friend who lives across the country. And we always had people we've never met before traveling with us.
Absolutely. And look, one of the big things that is interesting and challenging. It's something that's at a remove. It's in a different place. People can't really escape, and so the dynamics are pretty important. Managing your own expectations about what's going to happen is key. There will always be that one person. There will always be that, right? And so, you're going to generally have a great experience. Everyone's generally going to be in sync. Everyone's generally going to be fine. And there's always going to be someone that's just sitting there like that, right? And you know that. So if we know that, we don't get upset. Okay, what's the challenge? What's going on? Well, we bring them along. We don't let them ruin, our time or the time for everybody else.
Yeah, definitely do retreats. You could all use some extra income in your studios and some extra great publicity. 100% do retreats. And this is such an easy way.
Welcome on board, guys. Let's do it.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys next time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining.